My name's Nate Gberry. I'm the director of the Redeem, and today I have with me Brannen Dorman. Brannen has spent the last several years with Training Think Tank in Atlanta, and he's married to Jordan, which, by the way, I've heard is the superior athlete in the family. He has three
He
young
is.
kids, and we're going to jump right into our conversation today. Brannen, thanks for joining us on this episode of The Redeemed Man.
Thank you for having me, Nate. And you're right. She is definitely the superior athlete. I'm sure we'll get into it.
Well, I would like to start off with just some questions, some rapid fire questions, just so our audience gets to know some background and get you warmed up. First off, I would love to know three words that you would use to describe yourself.
Do you want three words I would describe myself or three words that my wife would describe me?
Well, let's go with the ones you would describe first, and then her three.
Here are the ones that I want to be described as when I
Yeah.
die. So these are the things that I'm aspiring to. I think one would be dependable, which I'm doing my best to be that. I think the second would be godly, or that'd probably be the first one, right? And then the third is going to be multi words, which would be family man.
And what's one word your wife would use?
I think good looking. I know it's two words, but that's the goal, right?
Hey, that's a good one for your spouse for one of the ones that they want to share. I'm sure there's some probably more entertaining words.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there.
Um, what's one of your least favorite exercises?
The thruster. So for those that are familiar with the CrossFit space, basically you have the barbell in a front rack position, so it's on your shoulders in front of your neck, and you squat down, your hip has to get below your knee, and then you go all the way up where the barbell then is pressed over your head. It's just like a full body exercise, and if you do a lot of them, like in a CrossFit space, obviously it's very challenging.
Um, your favorite one?
My favorite exercise would probably be the snatch. That's an Olympic weightlifting movement. We can use it for all kinds of athletes, though, like from the golfer all the way to the football player to the CrossFitter to the swimming athlete. And they'll do different variations, but it's just like the utility there is very high because of the speed and power and then the precision that's needed for the lift.
Favorite memory with your wife?
Favorite memory, this is probably a cheat, but I think the best memory is the finding out that she was pregnant with our first
Yeah.
kid, just because that was like something that we were anticipating, and then obviously the birth. But pre-kids, the best memory I have, we went out to Las Vegas, and I know everyone thinks, oh, you're staying in Las Vegas, but we actually went to a national park each day. That was why we did it, because there's so many within a couple hours. So one of the days we went to Zion National Park. So for those that haven't been there, that's like a must do. And we went up to Angel's Landing, which is one of the hikes. And at the top of there, we sat for like 20 or 30 minutes and just, yeah, it was, I mean, you're in awe of God's creation, but it's an amazing place.
Yeah. Love national parks. We have a list as a family we're working on. We have not made it there as a family, but definitely love
Must
to
do.
go.
You have to do. It's amazing.
It's what I've heard. Everybody says it's one of their favorites. So Grand Canyon was pretty cool for us. We did last year. So
Yeah,
um,
we didn't go to the Grand Canyon, but we went to a bunch of other ones that were close by.
nice. What is if you were going to go anywhere right now on a trip, where would you go?
I think it would have to be Europe. That's something that we've talked about. We've traveled over around the U.S. quite a bit, especially pre-kids. Now it's crazy. We have three, and it's a little bit harder, as everyone knows that has little kids at home. But we've talked about this for the last couple of years. Our 10-year anniversary, we're a couple years away from that. Going over to Europe and basically like taking the trains to all the different countries. It just that's like the different culture, being able to see different lands and some of the mountains over there, like in Switzerland, would be amazing.
You'll love that trip. It would be amazing. And Europe is awesome. Like you said, you get to see and experience so many different cultures. What book are you currently reading?
Yeah, the one that I just finished is "Be the Dad She Needs You to Be," which is I think it's Kevin Leman, and he has some great books. But we have three kids. Our oldest is a girl, and so learning as a dad how to be a girl dad, I think, is important, especially I'm not as empathetic. At least my wife says that as I should be. So I'm learning how to do that, but I've read several books that have just been awesome and kind of helped change my perspective too on like this is the way that I communicate with her to help her in the journey that she's on.
Just wait till they are teenagers or preteen, and they're excellent at rolling those eyes and
We already get that. She's 5.
yeah. Well, Brandon, we really are thrilled to have you on the show. We've been talking in the last few podcasts about health, and obviously your background, fitness. You played college sports. Talk to me a little bit about your growing up, your family, how you ended up in the fitness field.
Yeah, so I grew up loving sports, but I didn't actually play many sports until I got into middle school. And I think part of that is my family it wasn't really into health, wellness, fitness, or even sports. Like I grew up with a stepdad who was an amazing man, but like he watched football and that was kind of it, right? So we'd watch football together, and we loved watching the Florida Gators growing up, or we'd watch some professional, some games in the NFL. But watching, I was like, I want to play. My brothers didn't play, my sister didn't play. I was like, I'm going to try this. And so in middle school, I started playing football and fell in love with it, but realized quickly that I was not as fast or big or strong as some of the better athletes on the team. So that's kind of what started my fitness journey. I think the question was, okay, can I get better at this sport because I actually enjoy playing it to be able to play long term? And so I just kind of started dabbling in the sport arena and in the fitness arena, and then eventually that led to a passion for fitness. So once I got into high school, I was reading books like any exercise science book I could get my hands on. I was reading all the old school bodybuilding books, Charles Poliquin and others, trying to figure out like, can I get bigger, can I get stronger, can I get faster? And that kind of just led all the way through college and into what I'm doing today.
Love it. In college, so you ended up at Wheaton. How did you end up going to Wheaton to school to play football as well?
Yeah, during the high school process of being recruited and trying to figure out where to go, I wasn't like a highly touted recruit. The offers that I got were Division 2 offers. Wheaton is a Division 3 school, so they actually don't offer scholarships for athletics. And so it was kind of like on the back of my mind. So at first, like, oh, I need to get a scholarship to play football. But then I went up there for a visit and fell in love with the place. The coach at the time, his name's Mike Swider. He's just a wonderful man of God, and the community that they've built there. I tell a story all the time, but to give you an example, it's been 13 years since I graduated, and to this day, I still have a Bible study I do with 8 of the guys on that college football team. Like the brotherhood that is there is extremely special, and you can't get that many other places. And so going up there and seeing that, like, I'm there, I see these other guys on the team and what they have, and I knew it was special once I took that visit. And so I went around and took a bunch of other visits and just was like, God is clearly calling me to Wheaton. And I'm beyond thankful that I went there. And again, the friendships, the relationships that I still have to this day, I can lean on those guys. I can call them if I'm in need. And again, to have them to be my accountability partners, even to this day, I think is special.
Super special. And that's really what the Redeem's all about is connecting men and supportive community, knowing that, we need guys to pull out the best in us and encourage us when we're struggling. And that group that you've been journeying with for 8 years, what have you learned through being close to that community of guys, and what has really propelled you to be the dad, the husband, and even the leader in your arena of work that that group helps bring out in you?
I think there are a few things. One is just the accountability that they provide. So, we meet on a biweekly basis. So
Okay.
basically every second and fourth week, actually on Thursdays, which is the day that we're recording this, not that people would know that, but we did it this morning. So the process is basically we do like a round robin where somebody leads each time, and then we go around and just like check-ins. And that to me is so powerful because I trust them, I believe in them, and I can be vulnerable with them. So when things are going wrong, or when I've done something wrong, I'm tempted. I can say, "Hey, I need some help in this area." And then the second thing is not just the accountability, but also the feedback that we get. Right? When you have other good men, they can give you their experiences and say, "Like, I've been through that, and I know what happened, and here's how I dealt with it." And whether you do that same thing or not, I can learn from their experience and then say, "Okay, this is how so and so dealt with this situation. Here's how I'm going to deal with it." The other really cool thing I think with having men in your life that you can count on is like it's always a phone call away, right? So like got guys that live in Colorado or New York or Arkansas that are all in that group, but I can call them in a second and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this situation right now. I need you to pray for me."
Yeah.
And that's been I needed that. And I'm sure we'll get into kind of the whole the life story and how things happen through that process. But after college, I was in a pretty rough spot because just I didn't have any accountability, and not that I ever fell far away from the faith, but I think that I was in a really bad spot just in my own spiritual journey where I needed those men, and that's when they came in to kind of fill that void that I needed.
Man, just hearing that story and the encouragement those guys are bringing is just such a picture of why we as guys need that community around us. I think there's something very special about men who really journey together. I think that's why sports teams often are what guys have great memories from, because they get that experience somewhat when they rally together to achieve a great goal. Or military guys who've served with other brothers side by side, and there's just this special bond. And I think when guys experience that in the faith community and realize that we have a mission that is really the biggest mission ever that somebody could be a part of, and we get to do that and encourage each other and challenge each other and bring out the best in each other, it's really powerful. So thank you for sharing about that group of guys that you have. And if if you're listening and you don't have that group, that's what the Redeemed is all about. We have small groups and monthly huddles just to try to connect guys in community, because it is essential. In that season after finishing up at Wheaton, what was your journey like? And then I know you for a time worked and led with a group back in Florida. So talk a little bit about that and how you continued to grow and develop your skills in the fitness industry.
Yes, the first step is actually back in college where I met one of my mentors and still to this day, like, probably the guy that I look up to most. His name's Keith Cody. He ran Fellowship of Christian Athletes in the Wheaton area. And so I got connected with him and I started a small group. And then over time, I started leading the kind of the entire Wheaton FCA for their speed and agility training. So one of the things we did as a just a ministry partnership is with the different high schools. We would go and help their, football players or lacrosse athletes or whoever wanted to come to these summer camps. And we would do speed and agility training in the mornings, and then we would do Bible studies with them in the afternoons. And it was a wonderful time, but that like really like fueled the fire for my passion for fitness and understanding the human body and seeing how far we could take it for performance. So it's kind of like this awesome balance of like helping people with their faith and doing the thing that I also loved, which was performance minded, like athleticism. And through that connection, I actually took a job down in South Florida at a school down there, Boca Raton Christian School, and I was their strength and conditioning coach. And also, I taught Bible and theology. So my minor in college was Bible and theology. It was Wheaton's a Christian school, so that's one of the things that they offer. And it was a great, great opportunity for me to continue to learn the Bible. But I will say, and this is something that I've talked to many people about, I think one of the problems that I had going from school into that world was I knew the Bible really well. Like if you asked me any verse, I mean, I was so well read and studied, and I could tell you all about theology and the different belief systems, different denominations, but it just became a chore almost, and not a love or a passion, or I wasn't delighting in the law of the Lord, like the psalmist says. It was more like I know the law of the Lord, and there's a very big difference there. And so for 2 years I was teaching the Bible, but I wasn't really believing the Bible. And that's what I meant when I said earlier about kind of having a dark spot of I look back and I'm like, man, I was dead in my faith. Again, like I could tell you and I played the role, but at the same time, it was just very challenging. I didn't feel alive in what I was doing. And through God's grace, obviously I was able to turn that corner. And part of that process was connecting with some of these men that I met at Wheaton.
When you think about dry spells like that, I think everybody's experienced it, and oftentimes it can be that route where we get away from the relationship and we start focusing on the rules or the knowledge part of it. And the amazing thing about it is that God pursues us in the middle of that. He is all about that relationship, and He wants that relationship restored, and is constantly pursuing us and putting people in our life to draw us back to Him. And I'm so thankful for the people that God used in my life, and just know what it's like to experience that refreshing that the Lord can bring. And when you get back to that taste and see that the Lord is good and you're experiencing that, it's so different than just knowing about God. And
Yeah.
I think it's easy to get to the other side of it and our heart get a little hard and us start just going through the motions. But when we experience that relationship, it really is energizing. It goes from duty to delight. And I think really that's about purpose too in your life. When you talk about fitness, I see your facial expressions like come alive because you enjoy it and finding
Yeah.
that space where you're passionate about it. How do you think men can discover their purpose and find the place where they come alive and use that for the glory of God?
You talk about the duty and delight thing, and I think that that plays a nice role in fitness as well, because duty's not a bad thing, right? Like I look back on those days, and while I wasn't delighting in the law of the Lord,
Yeah.
I still said this is my duty, right? So there are going to be those times in life where it's like I have to continue to grind and just do the right thing and know that through God's grace, these things are going to work out, right? And the same thing with fitness is true. You know, we tell athletes all the time, I mean, we have athletes that come in and they have a specific goal. It's not always sunshine and rainbows, you know, in particular for those that are at a high level because you're competing against so many other athletes that are really good. You know, we work with a lot of really good CrossFitters right now, and that sport has kind of blown up. And for those that know the sport, there's just a lot of volume that's in that sport, right? They're doing miles and miles of running, and then they're back squatting 500 pounds, and then they have to do thrusters like I talked about earlier about being such an awful movement. They're just doing so much. And the reason I bring that up is in the middle of that, it's just duty for them, right? Like I need to do this to get to the goal that I have. Like it's the work that they're putting in that is required to get that you know the delight at the end of it. And while they don't tie in perfectly with each other, I think that that process is very similar in that sometimes in your life you just have to choose to do the right thing, trusting that God's going to handle it at the end. You know, He's going to work all things together for the good of those who love Him. So we trust that process too with fitness. And I tell our athletes all the time, like sometimes it's going to be really hard. As anyone that's played sports knows, you're doing those wind sprints at the end, your coach is yelling at you. It's hard, but do it then so that you can get the reward later.
Great word, Brandon. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. I think it's so true for men, and it's a great way to discover your purpose and to come alive. So, how did you end up at Training Think Tank in Atlanta, and what do you guys actually do?
Yeah, it's definitely a God thing. When I was down in Boca Raton, I met who's a close friend now, but a former NFL athlete who was just down there, actually not even in the fitness space, but wanted to get into the fitness space. And we ran into each other because he was going to coach football at a local school. Started talking, and he's like, I've always wanted to open a sports performance facility, which was obviously a passion of mine as well. I was working at the school, but I wanted to open something where we could impact kids all around the community. Boca Raton's a great area for that. For those that are familiar, there's all kinds of amazing athletes. It's also very affluent. And so we decided to open up a facility. And through that whole process, I got just connected to so many amazing people. And one of those was the owner of Training Think Tank, who I work with now. So I took that job after a couple years. It's been 10 years now in Atlanta, which is where our headquarters are. And basically, we kind of have two sides to our business to answer that question. One is we work directly with athletes. So they come on, we do a full movement assessment, a physiological assessment on the athlete, and then we help them towards their goals. And there are all kinds of different levels of athletes that do that in all kinds of different sports. So I talked about the CrossFitters. We work with some of the best in the world. We work with Olympic level athletes in different sports. We work with field sport athletes. And then the other side of our business is education. And one of the things I think in the fitness space that people don't realize is the science is probably 15 or 20 years behind everything else, just because there's not a lot of funding in that space. And so we are trying to collect the best science, the most up-to-date science on here's how you should train an athlete, here's the best time domains for this style of athlete versus that style of athlete, whatever it may be. And we help educate coaches, strength coaches, colleges and universities if they need help on that stuff. And we will deliver that to them to help them, and their coaches kind of succeed with their athletes.
Well, I think a lot of guys probably listening go, well, I'm past those days of focusing on being the prime athlete. Your own life, like I know fitness has been an important part. What are some things that any guy could take to make healthy choices in movement and what they're eating? Because I think a lot of people feel like they're either all in or, they're just off the track. So,
Yeah.
what are some ways that guys could practically implement a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, this is a tough one because at the end of the day, and I said this at the beginning, I'm not very empathetic, so it's very challenging for me. Sometimes I just say, especially with someone that comes in and says, I want to, make the Olympics, or I want to make the CrossFit Games, or I want to, make the PGA Tour, whatever it may be that these people we work with, it's like, you have to make that choice. That's the duty that so to some extent, I know that's hard love. Men especially, I'm like, look, you've got to make this choice yourself to be responsible, because those little choices are the same things that you're going to do with the big choices in life, right? But with that said, I think it's important to kind of look at the things that matter most, and it's not exercising first. It's getting the nutrition and the sleep, or just kind of like all the stuff you do at home, that
Yeah.
self hygiene, that matters most. So a lot of people go to the gym, they work out for 2 or 3 hours a day, but then they eat really bad at home. They're only sleeping 4 hours a day. It's really hard to get healthy by doing that, right? You're just not offsetting it. So take care of your nutrition first, and just make a couple small choices each day. Like I said, like choose a better breakfast first, and then choose a better lunch next, and then choose a better dinner. Try not to snack after that, and then really dial in your sleep, because if your nutrition and sleep are dialed in, it makes it much easier. You'll actually feel better to then work out. The problem is most people do it in reverse, like I said, where they work out really hard and then they just are exhausted, so they don't want to make good food. They just
Right.
go to McDonald's or get Chick-fil-A, and it's then that whole thing is just like this like perpetual process of working really hard and then eating really bad, and nothing changes.
What are those disciplines in your life? I know obviously you're focused on fitness, but you still have to set up your own personal disciplines. What are some of those to both maintain the fitness and health level you want to, but also the spiritual health? I know
I
you
think
talk about a
routines.
group, but you probably have some individual time with the Lord.
Totally. I think routine is huge for me. And I know that that's not possible sometimes with work and family and all the other stressors that all of us have in our lives. And I'm the first to admit that my routines are very, yeah, probably 3 times a week I get out of it, right? Like that's just the way that it works. But I try to set up a structure where I'm the first one up in our house, and that allows me some quiet time. I go out on our back deck, I'll make some coffee, go out on our back deck, and have that routine of like having some time with the Lord. And even if it's like 5 minutes, like that's my time to protect and make sure that I'm doing that. And then with food and fitness, the same thing. It's like have a routine where even if it's 20 minutes a day, I know I'm going to get some fitness in. I'm going to get my heart rate up. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to sweat. That's important to me as well. And I try to make sure that I do that at least 5 times a week. And then with nutrition, I think a lot of it comes down to making sure that you're protecting the meals that you have as opposed to letting it be chaos. And what I mean by that is we have started to meal prep. I know that like that's the thing, right? Like everyone talks about meal prepping. It just makes it easier. If you on a Sunday decide hey, here are our 5 meals Monday through Friday, then me and Jordan, my wife, we know exactly what we're going to eat. And even if we are busy taking the kids to gymnastics or karate, which is what they're doing right now, we know what we're going to eat. And so we can protect that time and make sure that we have at least, again, some kind of routine, even when things are chaotic.
So your wife, I know, played at South Carolina and Florida
Yep.
basketball. So tell me a little bit about how you guys combine health, even with your young kids, because I think you guys probably are already doing some things with your kids that other people might not necessarily be thinking about. So talk a little bit about how you're teaching your kids about fitness and even competitive sport.
I think a lot of it is just letting them watch us do things. And this is the same thing I think is true in our faith.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, but I want my kids to see me do things
Yeah.
and then try to replicate it, as opposed to trying to just force them to do things that dad's not doing,
Yeah.
right? So, give you two examples. One is Jordan and I have tried to make a routine of going out and doing a workout together. We have like a little outdoor garage space that we have a couple things set up, a little barbell and some dumbbells. So each night we go out there and we'll do a little workout, but we let them sit there and watch us. And of course, the first couple of times they didn't want to. Like they're like, "Can we get on our iPads and whatever?" But after a couple of days, guess what they did? They started doing push-ups and squats, and they want to follow along with mom and dad. And I think that's true for most kids. So that's been really influential for them because again, they see dad and mom doing that, and they want to aspire to be like us. And then with our faith, it's the same thing. Like if they walk down the stairs and they see dad in his Bible or mom in her Bible or praying or making a routine of going to church, those things I think are more impactful than we think. One of the I just read a book. You asked about another book, but another book I just read talked about every moment is a teaching moment for our kids.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like even the smallest thing, how I react to my wife asking me a question, how I come in the door, how I interact with my kids, how I interact with the guy that's dropping the mail off, like all of those things are teaching moments for them. And I mess up all the time. Like I all the time.
But those are
But it
teaching
is a
moments.
good reminder to
Yeah.
know that I need to be aware that they're always watching.
Yeah, and those points where you mess up are teaching moments of how you respond to those, and excuse me, and what you do to own those. I think as a dad, one of the things I think that is probably the greatest delight is being able to own when we mess up and ask our kids to forgive us. I know for me, I'm super thankful for that opportunity and the grace that God's given me to be able to own some of my mistakes because those are hard sometimes to do. But as a parent, we get to model that. It's Jesus didn't just teach. He said, "Come follow me," and he had people, doing what he was doing. And so I couldn't agree with you more. Deuteronomy 6, I think about that passage and just what the Israelites would do to practice teaching their kids in every aspect of life. And that's exactly what you guys are doing. I think with Jordan and you both being athletes, though, does the competition ever get out of hand between the two of you guys?
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you a good story of one of our first dates. It was actually our second date. Uh, Obviously, I knew that she played basketball. Haven't seen her shoot. I didn't like look up any videos or whatever. So we went out to eat and had a great time. And then behind where our facility is, like right behind there, there's a little basketball court. And she had never seen the facility. So I was like, hey, let's just go look at the facility. Driving back there, but then I go to the back and she didn't know, but I had a basketball in the back of my truck. So I pulled it out and I just passed it to her and I said, let's go horse right now. And she beat me HORSE to nothing. Like literally, I had zero. And so we've played a few times since then. I still haven't won, but I know better than to challenge her in those games.
Yeah, that's great. Love the competition. I think it's great that you guys are doing that though as a family because those moments are things that you enjoy, things that she enjoy, and you're combining those and learning how to do those together. And I think that's super important because as couples, it's easy to do her thing, him do his thing, and before you know it, you're not even building that relationship together after you've kind of dated and married, and then it's like, oh, we're together. We'll just kind of coast, and having those moments you guys can build into your family and your marriage is super important, I imagine.
I need to find some things that I can actually win at because I'm struggling here, okay?
That's so good. With I know you have a basically a newborn in some ways. With the third child and busy schedule, you mentioned getting up before the family, but what are some other things besides your group, besides your time that you have built into your life to make sure as a dad that you last, that you run the race with perseverance, that you have a legacy? How do you protect yourself? What are some of the things that are just non-negotiables for Brandon to say, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to this place. I'm not going to participate in this because my family and the legacy I want to live is super important to me.
Yeah. I think outside of the accountability, which we already talked about,
Yeah.
that has been vitally important. And if I didn't have that, I think I would be in a different place right now, to be completely honest. Is finding a church home. That has been so powerful for us. And I think it's very easy to become complacent, especially when things get busy, of just like, oh, we're not going to go this week and oh, we're not going to go. And then all of a sudden, 6, 7, 8 weeks in a row where we're just spending time at home. And I know some people do that, and that's fine, But for us, it has been very important that we go to church on Sundays. We take our kids. Here's why we do it. This is the Lord's Day. Here's how we're going to spend our Sundays. Part of that is the routine. And I know that I can be overly black and white with some of those things. I recognize that. But I also think it's a very powerful thing for my kids to see dad doing that. And it also is another way to hold me accountable. Those aren't the same men that maybe I'm doing a Bible study with. But it allows me to stay rooted in a church family that's close by that, again, I can lean on, they can lean on me, and we're pursuing the same goals in our faith.
Could not agree more. Community and the church is super important. And honestly, in our culture, even among believers, it's lost its value and importance. And I think we're missing out when we're not plugged into the community of faith and giving of ourselves to build others up, encourage each other. So thank you for sharing that about the local church. If you're not plugged into a local church, you need to find one and you need to commit to it. And I think they're saying now that the average church member attends once every 6 weeks, which has gone down from once every 3 weeks. And I'm just blown away that people think that they're going to have a healthy relationship with God and other believers without the community of faith. So thanks for modeling that in the way you discipline your family and lead them. So,
Yeah, I think one of the things I just read was false teachers entice unsteady souls. And an unsteady soul is someone that's not in the word,
yeah,
right? And that's been me before too. So again, this isn't just
yeah,
throwing out a conviction at someone else, but I do think it's important that, to your point, if it's once in every 6 weeks and you're not diving into God's word, like you're not actually studying it and guarding it and delighting in it, then it's very challenging to know exactly what's right and wrong in the world. And if we lose that, I mean, look what's going on in our culture right now. Like everyone says, this is my truth. Like truth is now relative for some reason. And I can identify anything in any way that I want, but that's not what the Lord says, right? And so it becomes very easy to kind of fall into what the culture says. We take that river and then all of a sudden we're swept away from the shore, whereas we should be rooted onto that branch, which is Jesus Christ. So I agree fully. And that's one of the reasons why we have proactively chosen a church and stuck with that despite things getting hard with a newborn.
yeah. So, how did you come to know the Lord? I know it's been a part of your life. You talked even about decisions you made early on, but when was that moment where you recognized you needed a relationship with Jesus?
Yeah. I was blessed because I was raised in the church. My parents, they got divorced really early on, so there was a time, and I was still so young, I don't remember anything. But we weren't in church, and there's probably 3 or 4 years there. But my mom remarried, and this is the reason why I brought this up is she married an amazing man of God. They're still married to this day. I call him dad, and he did the same thing. He said, like, look, we're going to church, and like this is what we're going to do, and it was because of him that it rooted me into that routine. And whether I was a believer or not as a kid, that's one thing, but it allowed me to get into a routine, which became that habit that then eventually in high school, I became a true believer. And through all the rough patches that we talked about after college, it's been a consistent piece of my life. And I think I've just, every year I'm always reaffirming that faith through the process of, having kids is like, okay, now there's another realization, having a second kid and a third kid. And so yeah, high school was kind of that defining moment. Probably my sophomore, junior year was really where I was like, okay, I need to make a choice here. And I think that's too when I was mature enough to
Yeah,
know like this is what I believe and this is what I stand for. And then college was probably the stepping stone of actually seeing men live it out,
yeah.
seeing 50, 60, 70 men on my football team all live the same thing, believe the same thing. And that's where I got some of the mentors that are still in my life today.
So that leads me to the question we ask all of our guests. But Brandon Dorman, what does redemption mean to you personally?
Yeah, I think it is just the grace of God. It's knowing that we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, but through His grace, through His goodness, His overwhelming mercy, He's called us back to Him through the cross. And so every time I fail, I always am very hard on myself. But then I always have to remind myself like God's grace has covered this, right? And that weight off my shoulders, I think, has allowed me to again delight in his word, but then also like I think it allows me to mirror his ways better. When I truly believe that my sin has been covered because of the cross, it allows me then to like move in his ways as opposed to it always being about me.
That's good. What are some personal fitness goals that you have right now? Is there something you're working toward?
So this Saturday, actually, so 2 days from when we're recording this, we are doing 1,000 box step ups for time with a 45-pound ruck vest on. So it's basically like a
Yeah.
backpack with 45 pounds in it. So that's the next goal that we have. We just finished a 12-mile ruck with a 45-pound pack. That was back in August, which was a lot of fun. We trained for that, and then the goal is sub 3 hours. So for anyone that wants to try that, it's much more challenging than you think to get it in under 3 hours. So this is the next step. After that, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I'm in the stage now where I pick things like that the community wants to do that's around me, and we'll have some fun with it. We'll push ourselves, and then we'll just kind of move on to the next thing.
What about spiritually? Or do you have an area that you're like, you feel like God's speaking to you about? That's, hey, I'm pinpointing, Brandon, I want you to step up in this area, or grow in this area, or stretch yourself in this area. Do you have something you're doing spiritually that you feel like is really challenge you in your faith just as much as you're challenging yourself with your physical fitness?
Yeah, I think something that's definitely been, poking at me a little bit is how thoughtful I should be with my interactions on a daily basis in a world that's, it's not Christ-centric. The fitness space is very much far away from the church, for lack of better words. And I have always, everyone knows what I believe in that space, and I speak out on occasion. But especially in today's age where everything is just so much about the person and so much about, the political realm and all of that, I think that the thing I want to do more of is speak out for Christ and speak out for truth. Talk about here's what the Bible says on this topic, and this is what I believe, and not be ashamed of that, because I think in the past I have been, or I'm just worried about my job. I'm worried about, what people are going to think about me, or to be completely honest, is like, am I going to get canceled for certain things that I say,
Yeah.
because we are in a big organization with a lot of followers. And I think the more that I talk to those accountability partners that I have, they've challenged me on that. It's like, you need to stand firm for your faith, and that's something that I want to do.
Well, we will be praying for you with that. I think this is a perfect opportunity, even modeling that and sharing on our podcast. And I would assume, being a Florida fan, you probably are very aware of one of the people that I think is probably the best at navigating and sharing his faith in everything he does, but then also, you know, being somebody that's likable. I mean, I think there's not many people that could say they don't like Tim Tebow,
Yeah,
and yet everybody knows where he stands, which is
right.
pretty cool. And so
Absolutely.
I think God's going to give you even more opportunities to proclaim that message and favor. I mean, even just listening to you share, God has His hand on you and what you're doing there, and I'm thankful that you're in that space, because at the end of the day, we need people that are living out their faith in every space of society. And so, thank you for representing Christ in the fitness arena. I know you guys are working with a lot of different athletes and have an opportunity really to speak to them about what really matters. And so thanks for doing that. And thanks for jumping on this show. We have really enjoyed having you on today. We'll have to have you back sometime and share a little bit more, maybe even have you and Jordan together and see uh, what she has to say, because I think it might be a little entertaining.
I'd love to hear it. Well, thank you for having me, Nate. I appreciate it.
Thanks for jumping on. God bless, and I hope you join us again for another episode of the Redeemed Man podcast. If you're enjoying this show, please rate and review. It helps us get this out to other men who are looking for quality content that can help them grow in their faith. God bless.